If you asked me what it feels like to grow up invisible, I could tell you. Because I've lived it, from the dusty playgrounds of South Side elementary schools to the cold waiting rooms of landlords who wouldn't even meet my eyes. My name is Sharon Bell, and for as long as I can remember, I've had to fight just to be seen. I was born and raised in Bronzeville, Chicago, a neighborhood with deep history, deep pride, and even deeper pain. My mama worked as a housekeeper in hotels, and my dad, well, he left when I was 6. I don't remember his face. I remember my mom's, though, tired eyes, cracked hands, and the way she always made cornbread when I was sad. School was never a safe place for me. I still remember the third-grade teacher who smiled wide at the white kids in the front row, then looked through me like I was part of the wallpaper. Her name was Mrs. Danvers. One time I turned in an essay about Harriet Tubman. I'd worked all weekend on it, and she handed it back with a red mark and just said, "Did you really write this, Sharon?" That was the first time I felt like I didn't belong in my own classroom. It got worse in middle school. I was the only black girl in the gifted program. They made sure I never forgot it. The principal once called my mother in for a meeting because I'd talked back to a teacher. I'd only asked why our history books had more pages on European kings than on civil rights. But the tone of my voice, that was the problem, apparently. Too confident. Too loud. Too much. In high school, I was told by a counselor that college might not be realistic for someone with your background. She didn't say black. She didn't have to. I heard it. By the time I was 18, I had learned 2 rules. 1. Smile. 2. Don't expect anyone to help you. So I didn't. I worked hard. 2 jobs. First at a laundromat, then at a diner. I saved every dollar I could. I skipped birthdays, holidays, even sleep, just to get a 1-bedroom apartment on the South Side. I remember the day I moved in, I bought myself a candle from the dollar store, vanilla scented. It was the first thing that had ever been mine. For a few years, I made it work. I had my routines, my church, my neighbor Ms. Green, who always left extra pie on my doorstep. Life was never easy, but it was mine. Until the letter came. I came home after a double shift, kicked off my shoes, and there it was taped to my front door. Yellow paper, thick marker ink. Notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. I stared at it, heart pounding. There had to be a mistake. I paid rent on time. I never caused trouble. I was quiet, respectful, dependable. But none of that mattered. The building had been bought by a new management company, Clearsky Properties, owned by someone I'd never heard of. They claimed they were revitalizing the neighborhood. That meant pushing out people like me so they could charge $2,000 a month to folks in skinny jeans who'd never eaten off a paper plate. I called. I begged. I even offered to pay more. They didn't care. They said they'd reevaluated tenant profiles. Whatever that meant. I had 30 days. It was raining the night I left. I packed everything I could carry into 3 suitcases and gave the rest to Ms. Green. I kissed the wall where my mama's photo used to hang. And then I walked down the stairs and into nowhere. I started sleeping on couches. When that ran out, I found a women's shelter. It was clean, but cold. Every morning I got up, put on my uniform, and worked my shift at the diner like nothing had changed. People still looked through me like I was part of the scenery. Just another black girl with tired eyes and cracked hands. Some days I'd hear things, little whispers from the regulars. She's always working but going nowhere. You know how they are, they never really get out. People like her, they're used to struggle. They didn't say it to my face, but I heard it. I always heard it, and yet something in me refused to give up. I wasn't born with money, or a father, or a last name that opened doors, but I was born with fire. And that fire is the only reason I was standing on that sidewalk, downtown, weeks later, shivering in a too-thin coat, clutching my worn-out purse, just trying to make it through another Chicago winter. What I didn't know was that I was about to change someone's life. And in return, he was about to change mine. Chicago winters are unforgiving. The wind doesn't just cut through you, it judges you. I'd gotten used to the sting on my cheeks, the numb fingers, the dull ache in my bones. Most people on the street had somewhere to be. I was just trying to survive. That day had started like any other. I'd pulled a double at the diner, wiped down the same tables, poured the same lukewarm coffee. A woman in a power suit snapped her fingers at me to refill her glass. A man in a Patagonia vest left a $1 tip and called me sweetheart. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody ever did. I stepped out of the diner just before sunset. The streets glowed orange from the low sun, reflecting off the glass towers. I was walking down Michigan Avenue, hugging myself for warmth, when I stopped at the corner of Wacker Drive, waiting for the light to change. That's when I saw him. He stood next to me, tall, white, clean-shaven, with salt and pepper hair and a coat that probably cost more than I'd make in 2 months. His gloves were leather. His shoes shined. He held a phone to his ear, talking loudly, annoyed. "Tell the board they can wait," he barked. "I don't care if they fly in from Zurich. I own that meeting." I glanced at him, then looked away. I didn't know who he was yet. I had no idea that the man standing inches from me was Jonathan Crestwood, billionaire CEO of Crestwood Technologies, one of the richest and most influential men in America. To me, he was just another man in a fancy coat who wouldn't even notice a woman like me. The crossing light blinked green. A crowd began to walk. He stepped off the curb, still shouting into his phone. And that's when I saw it, a black SUV barreling down the street, speeding through a red light, horn blaring too late, tires screeching. It was going to hit him. Everything slowed. My heart slammed into my ribs. I didn't think. I just moved. I dropped my purse, lunged forward, grabbed the back of his coat, and yanked. Hard. He stumbled back just as the SUV roared past us, missing him by inches. The rush of air lifted my hair. The driver never even stopped. Jonathan staggered backward, wide-eyed, arms flailing. He looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost. His phone clattered to the sidewalk. For a moment, no one said anything. Then I heard him breathe fast, shallow, panicked. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. You just." "That car wasn't stopping," I said quietly. "I didn't see it," he muttered, looking back at the intersection. I would have been dead. I finished for him. His hands were shaking. Mine were too. I bent down to pick up my purse and noticed a tear at the bottom. My last few dollars had spilled onto the sidewalk. I scrambled to gather them. That's when he saw me. Really saw me. "Wait," he said, reaching into his coat. "You saved my life." "I didn't do it for money," I muttered, brushing him off. "Just be careful next time." I turned to walk away. But he followed me. "Hey, hold on, what's your name?" "Sharon," I said over my shoulder. "Sharon, you look. Please, wait. I need to do something." "You don't owe me anything." "No, I do." I sighed. This kind of man? He'd forget me in an hour. Chalk it up as a good story for his next charity gala. But then he did something strange. He took off his glove, extended his hand, and said, "Thank you, Sharon." For real. There was something in his voice. Something human. I shook his hand. His grip was warm, solid, and for the first time in years, someone looked me in the eye like I mattered. Then he pulled out a sleek black card from his wallet. "This is my direct line," he said. "I don't give it out. Ever. But I want to help you. You don't even know me. You're the only reason I'm breathing right now." I stared at the card. Embossed gold letters. A name that meant nothing to me at the time. Jonathan Crestwood. Crestwood Technologies. President and CEO. I tucked it into my coat pocket and walked away before I could change my mind. As I reached the corner, I turned to see him still standing there, staring after me, not like I was some miracle or some charity case, but like he was the one trying to figure out how he was still alive. And that was the moment I knew. My life had just collided with someone else's, and neither of us would ever be the same again. For 3 days, I carried that black card in my coat pocket like it was burning a hole through the fabric. Every time I brushed my hand against it, a knot formed in my stomach. I told myself it didn't mean anything. He probably forgot about me the second I walked away. But late on the third night, I stood in front of the cracked mirror of the halfway shelter I'd been crashing in and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me was tired, bruised by life, but still standing. And I asked myself, what if this is it? What if this is the one moment the universe decides to throw you a rope instead of a brick? I reached into my coat, took out the card, and dialed the number. 1 ring. 2. 3. Crestwood, a deep voice answered. My throat clenched. It's Sharon. Silence. Then, Sharon, he said, and it was like I could hear the recognition in his voice, like I wasn't just some woman he forgot in a blur of business meetings and luxury cars. I was hoping you'd call, he said softly. I didn't know how to find you. You probably have a million people calling you. I don't answer most. I waited for you. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to people waiting for me. He asked to meet. I hesitated. I didn't trust rich people, not after how many had looked down their noses at me like I was something sticky they stepped in. But something inside me, a small voice I hadn't heard in years, whispered, maybe not everyone's the same. I agreed. We met at a small corner cafe in Lincoln Park. He walked in alone. No assistant, no suit. Just a man in a soft sweater, jeans, and tired eyes. He ordered us coffee. Black for him. Extra cream and sugar for me. He sat across from me like we were equals. Like he hadn't just walked out of $1 million boardroom to talk to a woman who couldn't afford rent. So tell me, Sharon, he said, hands folded. Who are you really? And I told him. Not everything, not yet, but enough. About growing up in South Side Chicago. About the way teachers told me I was too loud, too angry, too dramatic, when I was just passionate, just hurt. About the kids who threw paper balls at my hair, who called me names I still can't repeat. About how I was made to feel like I didn't belong in my own country. About how I tried to go to community college, but dropped out to take care of my sick mama. How she died in my arms one winter night with nothing but an old blanket and my voice whispering prayers. How I lost the apartment after missing 2 rent payments. How I moved into the shelter, started working 2 jobs, just trying to stay afloat. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just listened. And when I finished, he said, Sharon, the world's done you wrong in 1,000 ways. But you still jumped in front of a car for a stranger. I didn't think. I just moved. Exactly, he said. And I haven't stopped thinking about that moment since. That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan called me. He didn't try to impress me with money. He just wanted to talk, to walk in the park, to hear my thoughts. I could barely wrap my mind around it. One day, he brought me to his office downtown. It wasn't what I expected. No marble floors or champagne fountains. Just sleek, clean desks, focused people, and walls full of invention. He introduced me to his assistant, his engineers, even his boardroom team. This is Sharon, he said. She saved my life. People looked at me with respect. Not pity, not curiosity. Respect. And then one day, he asked something I didn't see coming. Sharon, would you consider coming to work with me? I laughed. Work with you? I don't even have a college degree. You have something better, he said. Perspective. Heart. Fire. I hesitated. He leaned forward. You don't have to be perfect, Sharon. You just have to show up. Let me help you stand again. That night, I went back to the shelter and stared at the ceiling for hours. No one had ever offered me a real chance. Not without a catch. Not without a price. But Jonathan? He wasn't just offering a job. He was offering dignity. And I didn't know if I was ready to accept that. But maybe, just maybe, I was ready to try. I showed up on Monday morning wearing my only iron blouse, a thrift store pencil skirt, and shoes that pinched my feet. I stood in the lobby of Crestwood Innovations, heart pounding like I'd snuck into someone else's life. I didn't belong here. That's what my head whispered. But then the elevator doors opened, and there he was. Jonathan smiled. No suit again. Just slacks and a gray button-down. You came. I said I would. I wasn't sure you'd believe this was real. I'm still not. He walked me past the receptionist, past glass-walled meeting rooms, past people who turned their heads just a little too slowly when they saw me. My skin prickled. He opened a door to a small office, modest but neat. This is yours. Mine? You'll start here, community outreach team. You know what it's like out there. We need someone who gets it. There was a desk, a window, a computer that didn't freeze every 5 minutes. I sat down slowly, afraid the chair might disappear. You sure about this? I asked. Sharon, he said. I don't give people handouts. I give chances. It's up to you what you do with them. And just like that, I was in. But the building had its own climate, and not everyone was warm. In meetings, some folks barely looked at me. One guy, Parker, head of operations, once said, Jonathan sure likes to play charity lately. He thought I couldn't hear. I could. The woman in HR acted like I was going to steal the staplers. Even Jonathan's assistant, a red-lipsticked woman named Chloe, who had walked in heels since birth, gave me tight smiles that never reached her eyes. But I did my job. More than that, I learned. I stayed late, asked questions, took notes. I sat in on meetings I wasn't invited to, just to understand how things worked. And slowly, things changed. People started coming to me, asking my opinion, asking me to review drafts before submissions. I even helped rework a campaign idea that saved the company nearly $100,000 in 1 quarter. Jonathan noticed. You've got the mind of a strategist, he said one night when we were the last 2 in the office. You think like someone who's had to survive. That's rare. I've had practice, I said with a half smile. He smiled back. But this time, something lingered in the air. A pause, a silence full of meaning. And I knew. Something between us had shifted. Then came the gala. A formal Crestwood fundraiser, black tie only. Jonathan insisted I come. You deserve to be seen, he said. Jonathan, people like me don't go to places like that. You're people like that. He sent a car, paid for a dress, deep emerald green, satin, hugging every curve like it was made just for me. When I walked into that ballroom, heads turned. Some in confusion, some in judgment, and a few in admiration. Jonathan met me at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't say a word at first. Just looked at me like he'd never really seen me before. You look breathtaking. Don't get used to it. Too late. He offered his arm. I took it. And for one night, just one, I didn't feel like the girl who got laughed at in school. Or the woman sleeping in a shelter. I felt powerful. Visible. Human. But reality doesn't like happy endings that come too soon. At the gala, I overheard 2 men near the bar. She's with him now? Guess he's collecting charity cases. I felt the blood drain from my face. I left early. Back home, I stood in the mirror again, that old mirror at the shelter I still hadn't left because I didn't feel worthy of an apartment yet. I looked at myself and whispered, maybe they're right. But the next day, Jonathan found me in my office. He'd heard. Let me be clear, he said, voice low. You're not here because I owe you. You're here because you earned it. People think I'm using you. Let them. We know the truth. Do we? I asked softly. And in that moment, he reached out not for my hand, not for anything physical, but for my truth. Do you trust me, Sharon? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure yet. Not of him. Not of the world. Not even of myself. I didn't run. That night after the gala, I slept on the shelter mattress, the same one that creaked with every breath I took. I stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains like constellations of pain. But I didn't run. Something inside me had shifted. I wanted more. And for the first time, I believed maybe, just maybe, I deserved more. The next morning, I stood outside Crestwood, coffee in one hand, fire in my chest. And then I walked inside like I owned the building. People stared. Let them. Parker tried to give me another backhanded compliment in the hallway. Heard you cleaned up nice at the gala, Sharon. I stopped. Looked him straight in the eye. You should try it sometime. He blinked. Said nothing. I kept walking. But trouble has a way of finding you when you're standing tall. Later that week, a man in a tan trench coat showed up in the lobby. He asked for me. He was from the city records office, and he had a folder in his hand. Ms. Carson, we need to speak about the property dispute involving 441 Jefferson Avenue. My old home, the one they took from me. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. Inside were documents, signatures, contracts I'd never seen. Turns out, someone powerful had fast-tracked the demolition of my old building just weeks before I was evicted. Someone with influence, political reach, connections, and on the last page, a signature. Jonathan Rhodes. I couldn't breathe. I left the building without my bag, my phone, anything. Just ran. Ended up sitting on a park bench across town, staring at pigeons like they held answers. Had it all been a lie? Had he taken everything from me, only to play savior later? My mind spun in circles. Was the job, the apartment offer, the praise, all guilt money? A cover-up? He could have destroyed my home, and then offered me a desk to ease his conscience. I couldn't look him in the eye after that. So I didn't. He called, texted, emailed, even came to the shelter. I avoided him for days. Until one afternoon, I found him sitting on the front steps, in a raincoat, soaked to the bone. He looked different. Not like a billionaire. Just like a man who was tired. And sorry. I didn't say a word. He spoke first. I didn't know. Don't, I said. Sharon. You signed the order. For 141 Jefferson. You signed it. Yes. But I didn't know people were still living there. My team told me it was abandoned. It wasn't. I wasn't. I swear to you, Sharon, if I had known, I would have stopped it. I don't micromanage all real estate files. I should have. That's on me. So what now? You give me another office? A raise to make it go away. No, he said softly. Now. I ask for your forgiveness. And if I can't get that, I ask for a chance to earn it. Silence fell between us. Only the sound of rain. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small, wrinkled photo. It was old, a black woman standing in front of a church, holding the hand of a little boy. That's my nanny, he said. Her name was Geneva. She raised me more than my parents did. When I made it big, I bought her a house. She died before I could say thank you. He swallowed hard. She was the first person who ever taught me what real kindness looked like. You're the second. My throat tightened. My palms shook. I wanted to scream, cry, hit something, but I didn't. I sat down beside him. Rain falling around us like memory. So what now? I asked. He looked at me, hope flickering like a fragile flame. Now, we rebuild. Together. If you'll let me. That night, I went home, not to the shelter, but to the guest house he'd offered. It still felt too big, too nice, too full of doubt. But I opened the door anyway, and for the first time in years, I slept in a real bed. The guest house smelled like cedar and rain. That first night, I lay awake with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. There were no cockroaches, no broken radiators, no midnight screams in the hallway. Just silence. And silence can be deafening when you're not used to peace. But slowly, I let it in. Jonathan didn't try to force anything. He didn't push for dinners or meetings. Instead, he sent me books, ones about business, real estate law, and community organizing. Inside each cover, he wrote a note. For when you rebuild, you will. And I did. At first, I thought small. A food pantry near the old lot of 441 Jefferson Avenue. Then, a mentorship program for girls who looked like me. Girls told they were too loud, too dark, too poor. I called it the second glance. Because that's what most of us never get. A second glance. Jonathan showed up at the first ribbon cutting. Didn't wear a suit. Just jeans and a hoodie. I laughed when I saw him struggling with the scissors. "City boy," I teased. "Teach me," he said. And I did. We worked side by side. Used his resources. My vision. He bought back the lot on Jefferson and signed it over to the community under my name. We turned it into a green space. A community garden. A place where no one felt invisible. A place where I planted sunflowers. The media caught wind of it. At first, they wanted to paint him as the savior. The rich man with a conscience. He refused. "This story isn't mine," he said into every mic, "it's hers." He pointed to me. "Sharon Carson saved my life. I'm just following her lead." And for the first time, the city looked at me. Really looked. Not as a statistic. Not as a charity case. But as a woman who had built something. And survived everything. Months later, I stood on stage at the Civic Renewal Summit. Hundreds of people in the crowd, teachers, officials, city planners, teenagers with wide eyes and dreams still intact. My palms were sweaty. My knees shook. But I spoke. I told them the truth. About how racism isn't always a fist. Sometimes it's a closed door, a denied loan, a silence that stretches years. I told them how the system failed me. How people failed me. But I also told them how I stood back up. How sometimes healing doesn't come in one sweeping moment. It comes piece by piece, hug by hug, name by name. After the applause faded, Jonathan found me backstage. He held out a small box. I opened it. Inside was a key. "What's this?" I asked. "Your new office," he said. "Downtown. Full staff. Fully funded. Name on the door." I stared at it. "Are you sure?" "Only if you promise not to disappear." I smiled. "No more running," I whispered. He nodded. "And Sharon? Thank you. For everything." We walked out together. Under the streetlights. Two people who shouldn't have crossed paths. Two lives that never should have intertwined. But somehow, they did. And somehow, despite everything, they built something beautiful. Together.